us into some dark magic. It's just this way at the Dim Carnival.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dim Carnival. I'm Bill.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we're talking about the Lotus Pod from Hence We Came. Talking about Tales from the Lotus Pod, which is the first album by the hip-hop super group Dark Lotus. I don't think it's out of bounds for me to say super group. I said it.
Lotus!
And it was released on July 17th, 2001, 5 days after my birthday. That's when it was originally released. When it was originally released, it was featuring Mars, who is a guy for sure. It was so at the time that this album was released, this supergroup featured Insane Clown Posse, Twisted, Blaze You Dead Homie, and Mars. And previous Dark Lotus tracks that we've listened to haven't had Mars on them. Right. I think they haven't even had Blaze You Dead Homie on them, or did one of them have Blaze You Dead Homie? So Tales from the Lotus Pod with the red foil cover with Mars on it came out July 17th, 2001. And almost immediately after the album was released, there was a falling out with Mars. He was not around for the record release tour. And in 2002, the quote-unquote definitive version was released, and all of Mars's raps were replaced by Anybody Killa, who probably should have just been on the album in the first place because he's a big part of Psychopathic Records and Mars not so much. And then that album came out in 2002. That's got the gold foil cover, or yellow if you prefer. And that is the album that is on Spotify, but it's not too hard to find the Mars version. But we're going to talk about both versions, really. We're talking about the definitive version, and then we're going to talk about where the Mars stuff diverges. But should we spend a little bit of time talking about who Mars is before we jump into this? Or should we talk about who Blaze You Dead Homie and Anybody Killa are? Or should we just start talking about the tracks?
I think we should talk about all those things.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, Mars. He is the fourth planet from the sun. He is actually Croatian. He's a Croatian rapper. He is billed from Chicago. He was born in Croatia, grew up in Chicago. He started off as an engineer in a recording studio. He met the guy from Ministry, Al Jorgensen. For those of you who aren't familiar with Ministry, they were like the industrial band when industrial became a thing. Mm-hmm. So he met a guy from Ministry, eventually joined Ministry as a guitar player and engineer, then was a full-time member, and he was basically with Ministry from like 95 to 99. But in all of the preamble to Mars joining Dark Lotus and Tales from the Lotus Pod coming out, he was always referred to as former member of Ministry. But you know, his impact on Ministry is debatable. He's not Al Jorgensen. He's just a guy. Not to diminish the fine works of anyone who contribute to Ministry or any industrial act or anyone who contributes to any band in any capacity.
Well, so I never listened to Ministry. I just knew that they were the industrial band or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised because when looking up Mars that there were approximately 1 million people in the band Ministry.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, you know. That's
like saying like he was in P-Funk, but not George Clinton.
Right.
Or Bootsy, but he was in it for sure. So after he left Ministry, he just started doing some rapping and some rap rock. And along the way, he met Insane Clown Posse. He did a couple of tours with a full band, which was also called Mars. And they did 2 tours with Insane Clown Posse during Bizarre Bizarre era. And Insane Clown Posse and Mars, there's like a reciprocal attraction there of like Mars liked what ICP was bringing to the table, ICP and the Juggalos liked what Mars's group was bringing to the table. So here's what Wikipedia says on Mars's Wikipedia page. Plans were made for Mars to join the supergroup Dark Lotus and sign with Psychopathic Records. However, Mars was still signed with Imagine Records, but Mars told Psychopathic that he could get out of his contract with his current label. So he recorded vocals for Dark Lotus album Tales from the Lotus Pod. However, most of the group were not as impressed with Mars as Joseph Bruce had been. Although he was featured on Psychopathic's 2001 sampler, he was ultimately never signed with the label as he could not get out of his contract with Imagine Records. This ultimately led to a dispute between Insane Clown Posse and Mars. Mars recorded a diss track towards ICP saying that he was the Six Jokers card, and then it was reissued with Mars's vocals removed, and then he toured with Korn. So, you know, there's that. And then he eventually, I don't know, maybe he became cool with the Juggalos later on, maybe not. Who can say?
I can say he actually did an interview recently. I don't remember what year it was, but it was like within the last 5 or 10 years, whatever, relatively recently.
Within the time since this album came out.
Right. And a reporter asked him, when they were reading his press kit, there was no mention at all of him ever working as a member of Dark Lotus, or that, you know, anything that his vocals were replaced on that album or why he left the group. So they asked, like, what's up with that? And he says, this is his quote, "I mean, I just will not give it any time. It's something that I moved past and I don't feel like looking back at it. It was all good. It was a beautiful experience." So, cool. You know, I guess he's like a Christian now. Actually looked him up on YouTube, and he's got a YouTube page where he's like constantly sitting in his car just talking to the phone about God or something. Yeah, it's super weird, man, because he's talking and there's his voice, and he's like very calm and whatever. Very different from his lyrics, obviously, like his persona on this album.
Yeah.
There's also one quick other thing I'm seeing here is that apparently when he was partnered up with Jonathan Davis and Korn, he had a song on one of his albums that thanked the Juggalos, and Jonathan Davis obviously hates ICP, so he said, like, oh, you're gonna have to take the word Juggalo off that album, and Mars refused and released the album himself. So,
oh
yeah, in your eye. I mean, it's like, obviously you should also hate ICP, Jonathan Davis.
Right.
Probably justified in that.
Yeah, I think a little while back I had mentioned in a podcast, I don't know if it actually made it into the podcast, but I had mentioned that Mars had become a born-again Christian and does Christian rap. And I just have to say, without getting too far talking about the album, but I loved Mars on this album, to be honest. And he must make some pretty amazing Christian rap. Like, I'm going to go to his YouTube page now that I know that I could probably listen to it on there, and I want to listen to it because I really think this dude's pretty bad. I love the way he sounds. I love the way he sounds on this album. I don't really like ABK on this album, and so
I think that ABK was done a disservice by the fact that the Mars version exists. Because I think if we had nothing to compare it to, it would be ABK stuff would be totally okay.
I agree. That was exactly what I was going to say when I talked about that. Is that it's unfair that not only had I don't think I ever listened to ABK's version on the album. Obviously, when we saw them live, that's what we saw was ABK doing it. But watching something live, and then it's always kind of different than what it sounds recorded anyway. So I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between songs in a live concert and how and what he's saying.
Yeah.
But like listening to it and bouncing back and forth between each one. And again, I agree with you, Bill. It's not fair. And especially because I think Mars does so much on the album that sounds so great to me. And when we first heard this album, and I loved it so much, to hear it like this now, like I'm just like, that's not the right way that goes. And it's not fair, especially because like you said too, that ABK actually, is a juggalo, was a juggalo, and probably should have been featured on it in the first place.
Right. I always preferred the Mars version, and now when I'm re-listening, I think I now prefer the ABK version just because ABK doesn't say really horrible stuff like every time he has any verse. But I think that the worst part, I think the worst part of the definitive version is on tracks like Alibaba, which we will get into in a minute, I promise. On tracks like Alibaba, when ABK has to like interject stuff quickly, like as replacement lyrics, it's very jarring because it's not mixed like all the way good. Like it's clearly it was done not like super great. So let us talk real quick about the fact that Mikey Clark was only around for 4 tracks off of this album, and then he split. He was like, "I'm out of here. I'll see you later."
Bill, do you know which 4 tracks he did? Because I wasn't able to find that.
I don't at all.
Yeah, I was not able to find really any information about the production.
But I would imagine that one of them is Alibaba, because that's the worst mixed song on the version.
Yeah.
Because it's like someone was like, "Oh, I don't know where all these sliders and tracks are." Like, there's a lot of, and also like Alibaba, like there's so much music on Alibaba. Like, I would imagine that has to be one of Mikey Clark's.
Yeah, especially because I've noted in a lot of songs how stripped down some of the songs were compared to what we're used to as far as production value. And I just thought that maybe that was on purpose because it's supposed to be a darker and scarier album.
Yeah.
But a different producer makes sense.
He left, and then Fritz the Cat, who we talked about on Freak Show, he was brought in to finish the album. Thankfully, it didn't sound like Freak Show when he came in to finish the album.
Yeah, and with a different sound this time.
And then Mike Pual contributed guitars and instruments, and he helped mix the album, the initial mixing of the album. And Mike P, would shortly thereafter become the next producer for ICP, the next major producer. So this is Dark Lotus, Tales from the Lotus Pod is truly the transitional album for Psychopathic Records. Like, literally, it transitioned from Mikey Clark to after Mikey Clark.
Cool.
And it'll transition back someday, so we'll catch up with you in a few years when that happens. So, shall we get into it, gentlemen?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, this week we're talking about the first 4 tracks off of the album. So let's talk about the intro. If you haven't listened to the intro, take a listen right now. I don't know how much there is to say about the intro. It's an intro. It sets up the Dark Lotus concept nicely, I think.
I'm really bummed out that I don't have the lyrics in front of me right now, but I'm not going to look them up. So I do have a couple things to say. Yeah, there is. So it's like a spoken word intro, kind of evocative to me of the Jekyll Brothers intro, where it's like just a guy doing a report. Basically, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so then there's this kind of duality thing that's happening where he's describing the different places that you could go, right? Basically, like describing people who are good and do good deeds. They're gonna go to an infinite life that's good, and people that are selfish and have like don't have a lot of heart are going to go to eternal damnation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some cool like sound mixing, soundscaping that they do during that when he's describing the more benevolent path or whatever. There's this like piano playing in the background and raindrops,
like chirping birds,
like frogs croaking or whatever. And then when he's describing like damnation, there's like I don't know. It actually was hard for me to tell. It sounds like a growl almost, like a low growl. And then there's people yelling or whatever, yelling things, and I had a really hard time understanding what they were saying. I didn't know if you guys were able to pick that out.
They were saying, "Oh, look, his cock coming."
To me, it sounds like they're saying you ruined it.
Mm.
But I don't know. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing, and they're basically describing he is saying that the six, like, warning of the impending six Jokers card and that being the end, and he's basically describing Shangri-La and Hell's Pit, right?
Yeah. Well, he's saying that. So he's saying that the Stoic path of the devout and worship, that many believe this will lead to an afterlife of eternal bliss, or they may choose to live life following the opulent path of hedonism and non-belief, which many believe leads only to eternal damnation. Which is interesting because he's saying that this is just what people believe, not necessarily that either of those is true. But I do like that. I do like the idea that Dark Lotus, specifically Tales from the Lotus Pod, or just like the literal Dark Lotus, the simple single Dark Lotus, I like that the Dark Lotus blooms as a last warning. Like, I think that's really cool. Like, obviously there's a lot of, you and I can pull a lot of like Dark Tower imagery from that. Like, where the Dark Lotus is like the rose, you know?
Sure.
But I obviously very, very much like that idea where it's like, well, your last chance, because Six Jokers card's coming up next. So there are a lot of tracks on this album yet.
There are a lot of tracks on this.
And I think they're all good. But go ahead. Let's Steve, anything else to talk about the intro?
No. I was never really like a favorite of mine. I usually skip it. Whereas other ICP albums, I will listen to the intro if I'm listening to the album. And so I think I just like listened to it the first time through, and I was like, oh, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Let's just get to the first song.
Sure.
I mean, it's, you know, and it's sad. Even this time when I was listening to it, I feel like because of that was my my go-to experience years ago listening to it, I didn't really let, like, the way you guys are talking about it, and I know the lyrics to the words to it, I mean, still didn't even really like think about it deeply as much as I probably should have.
Well, let me ask
I didn't like the I don't know, I just thought it was like a weak intro compared to like the high quality stuff I'm expecting.
Well, let me riddle you this, Steve. He says, a simple Dark Lotus has emerged from sacred soil. From this unfolds the single truth. Those who believe in the gospel of the Dark Carnival recognize this as a last warning. How do you feel about, I believe this is the first time that the Dark Carnival is referred to as the gospel of the Dark Carnival.
Yeah, that's actually really cool because, I mean, gospel means good news. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that there's like saying the good news of the Dark Carnival, which usually like they present as being such a horrific event that's coming, except for the people that are decent, good people, or juggalos or whatever, you know, whatever avenue they're deciding to go down in that particular moment. I think that's actually pretty brilliant, to be honest. I think it's great that they would put it that way.
Well, Steve, have you heard the good news?
Good news, cigarette juice.
What?
Tim and Eric. Tim and Eric. No.
Nice.
Spaghetti.
All right, shall we move on to the next track?
Well, I would say the time of choice is strongly upon us.
Perfect.
Pegasus cracks gargoyles take eyeballs from heads like scales.
Here we go. Wait. Settle it down.
Don't blow your load yet.
All right, guys. It's time to talk about Alibaba. So if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and take a listen right now. Guys, this song fucking rules.
This is the Lord of the Gods.
This is the Lord of the Universe.
This song fucking rules, man.
It does. This is a great song. I don't want to poo-poo on it, but I have to say, just as only ever really hearing the Mars version and then hearing Violent J do the intro to it was very jarring and shocking to me.
Right.
And it made me instantly think, oh, this album's going to suck. And it doesn't. So I'm not saying it does. And even then I made myself listen to Violent J do it a few times. And after a while, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I just got to like reprogram my brain. I got to make new synapses and everything to let the serotonin flow for the joy of it. But it was a little jarring.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned when we were talking about it up first. It is tricky when you've only ever heard the Mars version. Like, it is hard, or if you're like intimately familiar with the Mars version, as you and I are, it's tough to hear the Anybody Kill It version, only because Anybody Kill It is fine and good.
Yeah.
But it fucking isn't. I got visions, flashbacks of me and horseback. Like,
sliced out pussy holes.
It's so
like what?
hard.
Yeah, man, this is some shit, man.
It's so good.
Dreams.
Okay, so what I want to say is I thought it's really interesting that they start this whole album with Mars. Like, he was the guy that I didn't know at all, and I was like, wow, you let him go first?
And that's totally in keeping with how Violent J do when he get behind somebody.
Yeah.
Like, when Violent J is like, this is my boy, like, he's like, hey, you take this one first. Take it out for a spin. See how it goes.
When you were talking earlier about Mars and saying that only Violent J really cared for him and the other folks in the group didn't like him, that surprises me. And maybe no, that doesn't even make sense. I was going to say maybe because they're not as good as him, but that's not true because Twisted's really great. And I wouldn't say Mars is better than Twisted, but Mars just does such a great job. He kills it. I love his voice and he flows really well. And his lyrics are very shocking.
Yeah, he's got some brutal lyrics on this album, man.
I was supposed to say, everyone's like pretty dark on this album, but Mars is like fucking okay. So we're like murderers and like psychopaths. All right,
yeah,
I got this. Like,
yeah, he's not in on the joke.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's exactly correct. Like he's coming in cold. Like they're like, all right, we're Psychopathic Records, and like we like sing about killing people, and he's like, got it, murderers. Okay, here
perfect.
we go. And he doesn't understand, like I think maybe somebody told him like we're murderers, but we're like funny about it. And he's like, okay, so I would have a bag of sliced up pussies. All right, cool. That's funny to me. I'm Mark.
This guy's got an imagination for sure.
Yes.
I feel like this is one of the best Shaggy 2-Dope verses on any record that I've ever heard.
Oh, you mean venomous snakes magically charm all of this?
Disappear with a wave of a wand.
It's so good.
Hex is unleashed. What does he say?
Hex is
unleashed, allow doom to consume. Yeah, the lyrics on Genius are not correct.
Where do they go?
Yeah,
man, where do they go? Nobody knows.
Man, everything in this song is so good. Like, Steve started getting into it, but man, I don't think anything will ever match Faceless Cry as gargoyles take eyeballs from heads like skinless creeps.
So good.
Sorry. No, it's so good, man. How could you not?
It just popped out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Dude, everything on this track is unbelievable. And like I said, ABK stuff, totally fine. But it's such a bummer that, like, they alternate, like, every word in the choruses. Like, the ya, he, ya, mesh. Like, so, like, and Mars is a part of that. So they have to mix it so that it's like, yeah. And then, like, on the ABK version, it's like, yeah, hey, yeah, mesh. And then it's like, man, Chupa Nurches. No, it's not. It doesn't quite match.
Yeah, everybody's verse is great. Violent J's verse is it's weird they all go together, but the tone is different. Like obviously Mars is much more aggressive and dark. But I just love the way the tone that Violent J takes on the song is this very kind of like leading. He's really leading you along with his vocals. Like he's kind of dripping them in front of you or whatever. That's how I feel like when he's rapping, he's like just a moment behind or maybe just a moment ahead, of the beat. So he's like pulling you or whatever.
Yeah,
rad, man.
It is, and we have to touch on Twisted. They just
come with me to the legendary land of Alibaba. Place the genie's black gums. What you wish for, rubber lamp?
So good. And I'm a warlock, wanderer, vagabond, heavy talking backwards, Alibaba. And then Jamie.
Frog legs.
Jamie, it's so good. Damn it. So good.
You get those good doubling vocals that I love from Twisted.
Yeah. And then Jamie. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No good. Jamie.
Oh, I was just like Jamie. His verse kind of almost reminds me of Violent J's, where they like starts not rhyming almost and getting like out there, And I like that they did that. It's just out there and it's cool. I really like that.
Absolutely.
I gotta say too that Blaze comes through. Every single verse is great, and I love Blaze on this track especially.
Yeah. Yes. He's got a sweet voice. Like cool voice. He's got a very cool voice.
Yeah. Let's talk about Blaze real quick. Blaze, You Dead Homie, is from Detroit as well as many of the other gentlemen that we know. And he was around rapping, doing his raps. He was part of a horrorcore group called Two Crazy Devils, crazy with a K. That's how crazy those devils are.
Damn.
And he had the name Psycho C. And they opened for House of Crazies, and House of Crazies liked them, so they were in that circle for a while. Two Crazy Devils only put out one album, which ROC of House of Crazies produced. That group disbanded in '96. He floated around for a while. He was going to quit. He was going to quit rap. And the House of Crazies guys were like, Psychopathic Records is starting up. You should check them out. And he joined up with Psychopathic as like a tour guy, like a roadie and a hype man. And then eventually made his way into the group proper, took up the persona of Blaze, You Dead Homie, which is the gimmick of Blaze. Like he's like, I think of all of the people in Psychopathic Records, like he's the one with like a full-fledged gimmick. Because Blaze, You Dead Homie, his gimmick is that he was a 90s gangster rapper who was killed in a drive-by and resurrected and is still a 90s gangster.
Still rocking that Raiders cap.
He's got the big clock on his chest with the bullet holes in it. Yeah.
So good.
Amazing gimmick.
When I was looking for my Dark Lotus album so I could listen to both versions, in my CD binder folder thing I have that holds all my CDs, my Blaze Your Dead Homie CD is right above my Dark Lotus one, and I forgot I even had it, I think. So I'm going to bust that out and listen to it this week.
Hey, Dead Homie! So we have heard him on Most Tasteless and Freak Show, and I think maybe a couple other tracks, but this is his big showcase to shine as far as Dim Carnival is concerned, because he's crushing every chance he's getting on Dark Lotus.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, I guess we also listened to him on Psychopathic Records. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the first time for me listening to Psychopathic Writers, so.
For sure.
For sure.
Guys, Alibaba just rules, like, extremely hard.
What is the connection? What is the song about, guys? Apart from being awesome, where they say a bunch of cool shit, what the fuck is this song about?
I think they were trying to go for kind of like a Middle Eastern, maybe even like psychic or not psychic, but mystic Islam, or before Islam broke out in those areas. I think that like what they're talking about was what the people in that region were. There was a lot of like multiple belief systems, and a lot of it was dark and involved dark magic. And so I just think that they were just trying to pull from that. That's where like Frog Lake, like these images of kind of like they remind me of like Nile animals, and just like, I don't know. To me, it's very like Middle Eastern mysticism, and so.
Sure, and that would explain the, genie references and the lamps and stuff. He also does say, Violent J in his verse mentions a pyramid, that he bows to the pyramid, and that the secrets of the carnival are deep inside that pyramid.
Yeah. Well, so it's very, very clearly to me Egyptian mysticism. Like they reference pharaohs, they reference nomads, they reference pyramids, they reference flying carpets, they reference magic lamps. So it's like very much like a little bit of like Middle Eastern, but like a lot of Egyptian imagery. And I think that the intro is a big tip. This is the Lord of the gods. This is the Lord of the universe. This is he who the winds fear. This is he right here. I think that who they're referring to is Ali Baba. Like they're talking about harnessing the power of Ali Baba.
Did Ali Baba? I thought he was just a guy who. So I looked up this. I didn't know.
Yeah, Ali
I just
Baba and the 40 Thieves.
Right. I think the only thing that I knew about that was that he got over on a bunch of bad guys. But I didn't know the whole story, so I looked it up, and it was pretty interesting. It doesn't really have anything to do with this.
No.
That I could tell.
This is Ali Baba. This is the Lord of the Gods. That's who they're talking about.
I see. So it's not Ali Baba, he of the 40 Thieves.
Yeah. No.
Well, but there's something interesting in the story of Ali Baba. He tells his brother the location. So he figures out this secret location where these thieves are hiding all their loot, and he tells his brother, or his brother finds out and goes down there and gets caught. So the thieves kill him, and they quarter him. They separate his limbs from his body, and they hang him at the entrance to warn other people who try to break in. And that's the last line of the song. Tear your body limb from limb, only demons call upon him.
Hell yeah. So Ali Baba's okay after that, right?
Well, Ali Baba's fine. Like, Ali Baba, actually, the whole story, I wish okay, we should really look this up because it's fucking rad. Ali Baba is continuously saved by this, a slave girl. So the lady's name is Morgiana, and she is a slave of Ali Baba's. And she just keeps figuring out these thieves are like sending people to try to trap Ali Baba or trick him, or kill him. And she keeps figuring out who they are. Oh, so they're gonna sneak in jars. One of the thieves pretends to be an oil merchant and sells them a bunch of giant oil jars. And inside each of those is a guy, one of the 40 thieves. So there's 38, I think, or 37 jars. And she discovers it, the slave, and fills the jars with oil and kills all the thieves. And then the leader, he befriends the son of Ali Baba and invites him to dinner. But Morgiana recognizes him, and she does a sword dance with a dagger, and she stabs the dude in the heart and kills him.
That's
so
awesome.
She continuously saves the day.
That is super awesome.
Yeah, it's a kind of a cool story. I mean, apart from the fact that she was a slave to begin with. But okay, so you mentioned, I think, Steve, about the different religions in the area, and so that was one thing that I looked up or was able to find about the chorus of the song and the 7 churches that are mentioned. And so I looked that up, and that sent me to the Book of Revelations. Where they talk about the different, I guess, was it Paul or something? You know more about this than I do.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know.
You want to say it?
I don't know how the seven would tie into this song at all, but so I don't know if they're actually referencing something different about seven churches. I mean, there may have been. I know in Egypt they had their main religion, and I don't know if there's like versions that like break up and have different types of either god names or change things a little bit in as they conquer other lands where they will, if the people take on the religion, they still hold on to a little bit of their own cultural aspects of it, kind of like how Catholicism and Christianity is to this day when they took over everything. So I'm not sure if they're referencing that, but these would be very far removed from the seven churches that are referenced in the Book of Revelation. But I can talk about those churches a little bit, or just like, or just how Christianity in the early days and what Paul was doing. And I mean, the Book of Revelation was written by supposedly by John the Revelator, they call him, but St. John. And I believe he's supposed to be one of the disciples of Jesus still, like, and he was exiled to the island of Patmos for being a Christian instead of being executed, and that's where he lived the rest of his life. And then God appeared to him, and he wrote. Jesus appeared to him, and he wrote the Book of Revelation based on that. I would think that, again, those seven churches are very, very far removed from anything they're talking about. And if they're just trying to be like apocalyptic and bringing in stuff that they understand or have heard, it's very creative. But I can't imagine it tying into actual Christianity in the Book of Revelation.
I think it would help if I actually knew or was certain what the actual lyrics are of the chorus. Because on Genius it says the apocalypse of the seven churches, which
would be like,
which fits.
Yeah, that fits with the Book of Revelation. I'm just saying, even if that's what they're saying, I'm just saying that that's very far removed from Egyptian occultism.
Absolutely. Well, but I think that's what they're okay. So this is what I think it's really about, is that they became interested in this imagery of pyramids and Arabic characters and things have shown up in previous records, like in the liner notes of Great Milenko, right? Is where they have that big pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, but then they grew up in America with Western religion. And so I think that they're probably, they're interested in, or it's more interesting to them, these other religions, and they see the church in America as this kind of negative thing with the greedy, the televangelists or whatever. And so they're drawn to this other more like mystic, I mean, I had the same kind of experience as a young person. Like my family, I grew up Catholic, or my family's Catholic. I'm not. But I was interested in religion, so I started looking at like Eastern religions and other, Islam or whatever, because it was more interesting to me. And so I think that they're pulling some of these, and they're trying to make a connection between those two, right? Because they don't.
Well, yeah, definitely, yes. However, something did pop up in my mind as we're talking about this, and if you look at actual Christian mysticism, especially if you delve into different occult personalities for the 19th century or late 20th century, you have characters or people like Madame Blavatsky or something to that effect, and she came up with this really elaborate occult belief system that a lot of people bought into and is used very heavily into this day in occultism, and same with Aleister Crowley, and they touch on an Aleister Crowley idea way later in the album that we'll talk about. So in Christian mysticism, they definitely pull very heavily from Egyptian mysticism, and I mean, if you were to believe what Freemasons say where their start comes from, which is just fabricated nonsense, but most of them will tell you that, but it's a really great story. I mean, Freemasons believe they go all the way back to King Solomon, which is another person that will be talked about a little bit in future songs. And Solomon hired the first Freemasons to build the temple, and they were like these. Not only were they like master craftsmen, but they also like his name was like Aram Abif or something to that effect. I'm butchering his name, but he was supposed to be like the main person that and he knew the secret name of God, and he gets murdered by some people because he wants them to tell him the secret name of God. And anyways, the story keeps going, but it really ends up tying in that a lot of Christian mystics that formed the real Masons in like the 17th century, they really went back and really got into Egyptian mysticism and occultism, and that's why the Freemasons, who had so much influence in the founding of this country, why we see things like the obelisk in Washington D.C. and all these other different like Egyptian style monuments and whatnot, and the all-seeing pyramid eye and all those things. So that all ties back into Freemasonry, who ties back in, and just in general generic Christian mysticism, if you would look at it, that they do get their stuff from Egypt. So I mean, actually, I guess the seven churches could be tied into that if you're looking at the book of Revelation from a very Christian mystic view. So I think I was a little wrong to say that they're far removed. I think I was initially saying that the seven churches were far removed was based more on being raised as an evangelical Christian.
Well, there you have it, folks. we can close the book on that one. That was fucking dope, Steve.
Yeah.
Fucking 4 stars, man.
Oh, thanks,
well done.
dude.
A lot of information.
Sorry about
loved
that.
It.
Oh,
There's
good.
one more. Yeah, and there's one more connection, a religious connection in the previous line of the chorus is Kadesh, and I always assumed that they were saying Ganesh because that was the word that I knew, and they were just pronouncing it wrong. But I do believe it actually is Kadesh.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know. Do you know Kadesh?
No, but I know that that's what they're saying.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
So I guess I looked it up. There's a couple of different things that are called Kadesh, but the one that I assume that it is to describe a desert wasteland, because they do say the wilderness of Kadesh. It's a region in Syria that is thought to be potentially one of the deserts that the Israelites wandered. So that's what Kadesh is.
And that would make sense from Wilderness of Kadesh.
Right. That's why I mean, there's a couple, like Kadesh is a region in Syria, and there's different, whatever. Yeah. So this is, yes.
Also, it's just, Kadesh is, from a root word meaning sacred. So that also would line up with Dark Carnival mythos.
I might sever your head off and fuck your mouth.
I might spike your ass like Vampiro, that is.
Doesn't it? We always laughed at it going vamp ow, because that's kind of how it sounds.
Yeah. Ow. Should we move on to the next track?
I suppose we probably should, but god damn this song.
Yeah, I could just talk about Alibaba for the next 3 hours. This is so good. Let's move on to the next track, though. Let's talk about Something. If you haven't listened to Something, listen to it now. Now, it's interesting to refer to these tracks by track names, because generally, like, I don't think there were, like, track names on this album. I think it was just an album.
There were not. Yeah,
there
they
were
were
no track names.
Yeah,
but people determined them based off of, like, when you would load your album into, like, iTunes or whatever, it would have, like, the track name.
Well,
Yes.
Did you guys notice? Because when I put my Dark Lotus disc into my laptop, it brought up and it called this song Something. But when I was listening to the ABK version on Spotify, the song is called fucking damn it, what was it called?
Cripple and Rape.
Yeah, I think that is actually the track that. Yeah, I think that's also a very well known version of the title. I think that on I don't remember where I saw it, but I recently saw like Cripple and Rape Me like on a pretty prominent thing on Wikipedia. It says something. So
yeah, when I was listening to it, I was listening to it cleaning up my garage, so I wasn't taking any notes, just listening to it. And I made a mental note. I was like, oh, I got to tell the guys, it really sounds like he's saying rape me in this song.
Yeah.
And then when I sat down to look at it, I was like, oh.
Oh, weird.
I've always thought he just sounded like he was
out.
saying that, and I never knew.
You're like, I thought he said rape me.
Yeah, right. Oh.
Just rape me. I'm
on
Yelp.
On Yelp. Rape Me.
Half stars.
Guys,
It's a scary song.
I have some bad news for you. Your butthole just spit in your pants.
It's so scary.
There's a lot of the word butthole in this album.
Yeah,
like
heavy
normal,
album.
and I love it.
I think this is an all-time Jay quote. Violent J is, what's scary is not knowing what is.
Something scary. It's probably something scary. I really appreciate that. This is a pretty dark album, and we've mentioned before that Violent J in his audiobook says that he doesn't really like this era because it was like a dark time in his life and it's such a negative, dark album. But there's a lot of funny shit on this record,
Well, what's
you know?
funny is like almost everything Jay talks about on this whole album is fucking hilarious.
It is.
And I don't know, like, yeah, it's a dark album, I guess. Like, what Mars is talking about is super fucking dark. But, like, everything that Jay says is hilarious. And, like, there's a bunch of tracks on this album. I would say, like, maybe 3 tracks on this album are, like, straight up dark the whole way through. Maybe 3. But, like, I feel like this, especially the ABK version, I think this is a pretty fun album. And especially, like, it ends with, like, a shout out of websites. Like, how dark could this album be? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. But we've been talking about how hard Mars and Blaze bring it on this album. But shout out to Shaggy 2 Dope. He's on point throughout this album.
Yes.
Yeah, he does a great job.
He does
Excellent.
a great job.
That's all.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Well, we had a good run. Guys, we'll talk to you next week.
I mean, so, you know, this song's good. This is a good song. It's not Alibaba, but it's a good song. And I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I think
Mars's.
I mean, I've listened to both versions, and I know Mars's version, and I just heard ABK's version only once. Again, I don't want to, you know, it's not a knock on ABK, but I can only speak to Mars's lines, and I just love the way he delivers it in this song. It's like almost monotone, but it's fast, and it's just really out there and weird, and like he cuts all these fingers off, or middle fingers, and he sticks them up his butt. He sticks them all in his ass, and he
sticks them all up in his ass.
And spins in circles, and then clucks. Like, you know. And then when he says he calls upon his, this says Makalaba or something weird, in on Genius, but I'm pretty sure he's saying Murkakama. I'm not even gonna say it right now because I looked at that. And again, the word he uses in that is referring to in Kabbalah and other occult practices where there's this idea that you can meditate, and they believe that like we have these energy fields in our bodies, and one starts kind of like goes from our shoulders and then down to our crotch area as an upside down pyramid, and then one starts from our feet and then goes up to our crotch in an upright pyramid, and that if you sit in the lotus position and meditate, you can make those two energy fields spin in opposite directions, and when you do, you turn into a light being and you fly. and you can fly through the universe, and you look like a UFO as you fly, because then you have this like center as a dot, but the energy is spinning out to kind of make you look like a saucer shape.
Right, you got the energy of 4 dimensions.
Sure.
That's fucking rad, man.
That's really, and so
wait, what's it called? Say it.
I need to look at, because I'm looking at the wrong spelling. I have to hear it again to say it right, because my mind's not letting me produce the word. But it's like
Merkalaba is what he says.
It's the word is almost like that, and Merkaba, I believe, is the actual word, and at least that's what it looks like when it's spelled.
Yep, Merkaba. Merkaba. Merkaba.
Yeah. And so
also known as Ezekiel's wheel.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
That's fucking rad.
This album really has a lot of occult imagery riddled through it, and I'm very impressed with it. Very impressed.
These guys are into some shit.
Yeah.
Guys, here's how not dark this song "Cripple and Rape Me" is. The hook is that dog is talking to me.
Them there dogs, hey, don't do that.
I love that he's like, hey, that dog's talking to me. That dog scared me. And then you hear in the back, he's like, I'm sexy.
I'm sexy.
That's what the dog is saying, you know, like.
I like that Shaggy's dry hump brick. I don't know if it was a weird thing. When I listened to it a couple times on Spotify, when he says I'm peeking through the window, it's like in Spotify, it doesn't cut it out, but like it gets really low and then came back up when he says I think I'm falling for this chick. And obviously on the album it doesn't. And I was like, does peeking through the window, like being a peeping Tom, like is that like over the line for Spotify? I couldn't or is that just a mistake when it was downloaded? I mean, I may be looking way too much into it, but
no, were you listening to the ABK version?
On the ABK version, yeah.
Yeah,
on
because
Spotify.
They had to take Mars out, and he says, "Call me." So they did not re-record this album. They didn't re-record it. They just like Bill said, they just really ham-fisted ABK's lyrics in.
Yep.
And there's a few points where you can still hear Mars. He's still on the record. You can hear him say "Chupa what?" As they're going in. If you listen closely on the ABK version, you can hear him say "Chupa what?" Because they had to like cross-fade it out or whatever so that you could start to hear Shaggy. But there's some bleed over of Mars there.
Thank you for explaining that. I was like, what? Like, I instantly thought censorship of like, oh, was that too dark or too evil? And I was like, so anyways, never mind.
I think that it's not the last verse, but I think it's the strongest one is Blaze's verse on this. Which I don't know how you guys feel about songs about cop killing, but it's such a fucking brutal, like, just a rad thing to say, you know?
Oh, I have absolutely no problem with I don't want to phrase it like that. I am not opposed to people making art that expresses anger towards the establishment, and the police are a representation of establishment. So if someone's saying fuck the police or kill the police, or if they're Ice-T saying I'm a cop killer, I think it's only fair to let them have that voice, and it doesn't offend me.
I forgot we talked about that a couple episodes ago, right? Where he's like, Ice-T said, "You don't think I'm a..." Oh no, wait! I think they talked about this on outside the box set actually, where they did an interview with Ice-T about the song "Cop Killer," and he's like, "You think I'm a cop killer, and you think some other artist is a werewolf or whatever? Like it's a song." You know, like I have a message, and so that's how I take it from Blaze too. I don't think that Blaze literally wants to go out and shoot cops.
No more than they're gonna go and hit women in the face like they sing about, or cut people's throats, or all the other crazy shit they talk about. It's shocking,
right?
Shocking.
I'm sexy.
Are you guys ready to move on, or?
Yeah, I think so.
You have more notes here?
No.
All right, fair enough. I just tried to add some Merkaba annotations to Genius. I don't know. I don't think that any of this ICP stuff ever gets reviewed. So who knows if our annotations will ever show up there.
That's awesome that you did that.
Yeah.
I also know that pain is sexual.
Well,
Is it sexual?
Let's talk about I Hurt Myself. And if you haven't listened to I Hurt Myself, this is the last track we're going to be talking about this week because we've already blabbered on enough. So if you haven't listened to it, go ahead and take a listen right now. I like this song, guys. I like this album. Spoiler.
It's a good man. We got all good songs this week.
This is a pretty dark, this is as dark as Jay gets on the album because he's very funny, and then it ends with something very graphic and pretty dark because he jumps in a mosh pit, but he's alone. He's actually mosh pitting 4 trees, and his brain is hemorrhaging, and he's hallucinating. But then he wakes up in a padded room, and he tries to choke himself to death with his clothes. And then he wakes up again, and he's strapped down, but he realizes he's got about 4 inches between the back of my head and the metal gurney thing. Boom! Retractions. So he tries to kill himself by mosh pitting trees. So he wakes up in a padded room, and he rips his clothes off and tries to hang himself. And he wakes up again, and he's strapped down, but he realizes he can still just bust his head open. So he cracks his head until a broken bone pierces his brain, and then he hammers it in. That's pretty dark.
Yeah.
It's medium.
Do you guys get the same remembrance or throwback when I hear this song? It always makes me think back to one of the, I can't even remember the song at this moment, but where he talks about being at the Lilith Fair.
Yes.
and slam dancing or moshing. And
there wasn't any pit, it was only me, and that was it. But so what?
Yeah, and so I still picture this is just like him at the Lilith Fair, and he's slam dancing against trees.
Okay, but so he starts off. Okay, so this is where I want to start. This is a song about hurting yourself for pleasure, right? Masochism.
Mm-hmm.
And so it starts off where he's like, pain is sexual. Is this sexual? And then he's
horny.
And then, right. But then the song starts. The song starts and he's all by himself in the woods, some trees. I'm really getting randy here by myself.
Randy.
I always loved how he says the very last line that he's got the broken bone that's piercing his brain and he just hammered it in.
Yeah.
I fucking love that.
Yes.
Torture motherfucker, what? I thought the song made me think of the intro to Wu-Tang Clan, Enter the 36 Chambers, METHOD Man, Method Man. You guys familiar with that intro?
Nope.
Really? Okay, so it's...
I don't know that I've ever heard a Wu-Tang song.
Wow. The intro to Method Man is...
Is he dead? Is he dead? Is it that?
No, that's a great one though. Where my killer tape at, yo? Raekwon needs to get his killer tape. But this is actually Raekwon, I believe it's Raekwon and Method Man, and they are describing different means of torturing folks. Trying to and it seems like it's kind of on the spot because they're actually not really very clever. But it's classic. So the first one is, so it's like, I'll leave a coat hanger sitting on the stove and then I'll stick it in your ass real slow. That's
awful.
Right? It's really bad. Well, the next one that Raekwon says is, I put your nuts on a fucking dresser. Just your nuts laying on a dresser and bang them shits with a spiked bat. This is the kind of torture that this is not even torture. It's just hurting people.
Isn't that what torture is?
I think...
Fair.
I guess I think of more creative ways of hurting people.
Slow, methodic. Yeah, because
hitting them with something.
Yeah, hitting someone with a spiked baseball bat in the balls, they could bleed out within a few minutes. Whereas torture, actually, they usually prolong the person's life.
Well, I went back and listened to that intro just before we started recording, and that's about as ICP as Wu-Tang Clan is ever gonna get. There's a lot of butts and balls and dicks.
They should be proud of themselves.
Touch my butt.
Touch it.
Someone better wipe my ass or something.
Stop it, Bill. I'm laughing.
Okay.
I love all of the. Okay, so I was gonna say I love every verse, but I don't actually love every verse because in some of these, so like you were saying, Violent J is still being kind of funny. Like it's dark, but it's still humorous. But not everybody on this track is interested in putting any humor in any of their lyrics.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like there's this kind of gruesome realness to some of the verses, and it's almost makes like Violent J and Shaggy's verses, for example, much more cartoony. And so when Shaggy Tulip says he's gonna peel a layer of skin back and then slap it down, I just think of like Bugs Bunny or whatever. Yeah. Like it doesn't even fit. It's cartoon violence.
Yeah.
But when Monoxide Child says he's gonna dip a razor blade in gas and try to cut his skin off, I'm like, oh fuck, man, don't do that.
Blaze, I find Blaze's verse cartoony and comical, but that might just be his like delivery of it. Like pain of
bloodstains on my t-shirt.
Yeah, that and like you get the door till my legs fall off, trying to use my head with my skull too soft, and then like. The pain of a whelp shooting through my kidney. Blood rushes out when it's kidney.
In me. Oh, fuck. He walks the line. Because when his last verse, when he's like, cut off the oxygen and take my own life again. You know, that's to me, that seems like a little bit more real, a little bit more rugged.
Yeah, I agree.
He's from the streets.
He's from the streets. But I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for the little bit of levity from Violent J and Shaggy, I probably wouldn't like this nearly as much. If it's too dark and weird and gross, like I won't like it. I need something to like turn it around that makes it like it is fiction and it is silly and stupid. And it helps me look at it all that way. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the difference of, like, even though I wouldn't even watch a movie like Hostel because I've seen too many gory movies that were realistic in the past, and so I can't watch them anymore. But, like, I know Hostel's, like, this really gory film, and I couldn't watch it, but Dead Alive from, what's his name, the Lord of the Rings dude, Peter Jackson, like, that, the gore of that zombie film is so ridiculous and stupid, it becomes so cartoony that it's hilarious, and I can watch it. And so, like, it's like ICP keeps this Peter Jackson for me, if that makes sense.
No,
and I would not like it. Although I'm a little bit of a hypocrite in that because I still, ever since the day you introduced me to Necro, Ryan, I still listen. And I don't listen to his whole discography. I haven't heard all his music, but there are certain songs I still listen to. They're very old, and I really love those songs. And they're not funny, and they're gross. But for some reason, I don't know if it's just because he's so good. I'm not sure.
Well, I think like we have touched on in the Twisted conversations that we've had, and many of the other conversations that we've had, I think that the reason that I think people like ICP because they like ICP. And they come to ICP because they want a specific thing. And when it gets to super groups, it can get dicey because ICP is going to bring what ICP brings, but then everyone else is going to bring what they bring. And if you're not necessarily into that, it will affect your enjoyment of everything.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And I think that ICP has always had, as long as Twisted's been around, well, even before Twisted, ICP's pretty much always had something else on Psychopathic Records because they know that if they can at least have a house and a showcase and get a little bit of money, they know that there are people who come to horrorcore rap to get other things out of it. So, like, people listed, like, we talked about it, like, there are a bunch of people who are Twisted fans who don't necessarily like ICP that much, and that's because they come to Twisted because they want to hear what Twisted is bringing, and they come to Ouija Mac because they want to hear Ouija Mac's source material. And so it's like the people who like it all, I think that they like ICP because of ICP, but sometimes they don't want it to be funny. So there's other stuff there that they can listen to because they don't want it to be funny.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And I also agree with Steve, because like when Mars says he's going to slice up his face and his lips, like I don't really want to picture that. I don't really want to hear those words and make me picture that. Like that's a little too far for me.
Yeah.
But
I like Shaggy talking about biting a bowling ball and then leaving.
Right.
Show up, bite a bowling ball, and leave.
Although he does use the F word in that one, and I forgot about that until I heard it.
Right.
I was like, bummer.
And that's why I these days I prefer the ABK version just a little bit, because there's horrible stuff on this album. There's the F word, there's the R word.
Yes.
But like, just like the fact that I have a version of this album that has like 4% less misogyny on it, like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Speaking of misogyny, the chorus of this song is sung by some ladies. Yeah, actually, is it? I don't know. I don't know if it is Devagoli. I could see that it's her. I think it could potentially also be Sugar Slam. I don't know what her involvement was with Jay. This would have been a couple of years before Ruby was born. So anyways, yeah. Do you guys feel like, did you guys pick up any sort of like sarcasm in the words of the chorus are, tell me why you hurt yourself when you know I love you.
Mm-hmm.
And Violent J is in the background screaming, stop me.
Yeah.
Did you guys pick up any kind of like sarcasm, or that they weren't being like in the tone of the way that they sing those those lyrics?
It sounds snide. It sounds condescending. Like, I think that it's supposed to sound hollow, because he's pleading for them to stop. Like, well, then fucking stop. Help me. Stop me from doing this to myself. Like, yet they're insisting, like, why do you do this to yourself when you know I love you? And Jay's like, well, fucking then help then. So, like, I think it's supposed to sound hollow.
Wow. That's awesome, guys, because I never heard that in that, and I totally can see where you're coming from. I just thought it was ladies singing through their noses. You know, like, I mean, growing up in church, and like there'd be like some, and not just a woman, men do it too, where you just like, you get someone up there and they want to sing a song for the church and show their pipes, and they start singing, and they're singing through their nasal cavity, and it just sounds weird, and that's exactly what that sounds like to me. I didn't really interpret it.
My nose.
and so it's funny because, like, yeah, I can kind of hear what you're saying when I hear their voices again, and take away from like they're just not singing well to, oh, they're doing that on purpose. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really ever think about it that way until I was listening to it in preparation for talking about it here.
Yeah, though, but I think the Shaggy verse is also extremely funny.
Right, take the F word out of there, and yeah.
Like I don't consider it hurting myself. It brings me joy. Now shut the fuck up here.
Jamie's verse to take it out is so fucking brutal, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also, guys, do you think he means self-desecration, or do you think he means self-defecation is a beautiful art?
Self-defecation would be when you poop yourself?
Yes.
Well,
you poop yourself into a ball or something?
Well, I was just thinking maybe, like, because he's doing all this other weird stuff that's also very harmful to him, and if he's all opened up and bloody, and he poops, and then he smears, that's very unsanitary, especially with open wounds.
Pooping on yourself could be self.
Yeah. So if you're like self-defecating, and what him saying is a beautiful art, or certification. I mean, I just, maybe it's just because of the job I have. Usually, if someone poops himself as a behavior issue, they usually paint with it, and so we got a smearing behavior, and so like, I just see that in that now. He's just like rubbing it all over his belly, like, look at this painting I'm making.
So is it a beautiful art?
Yes.
It's in.
If you're wanting to cut yourself and hit yourself in the ankle with a PVC.
See, that's the thing that I think is hilarious. Because he says, hit myself in the ankle with PVC pipe, and it makes a clanking sound. The PVC pipe is
right.
plastic.
You could pretty much whack yourself.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt. It's like hitting yourself in the head with a water bottle.
No, PVC can be pretty thick, and you could hurt yourself. You could break a PVC. Well, it depends. It also depends.
It's not
on
like
the
sprinkler
thickness.
pipe.
No,
right.
It depends because they come in many different sizes.
I exactly think
right.
a sprinkler pipe. I think of it
right,
like
no, you just
a 20-foot long
pipe.
piece of thin PVC pipe, and he's like, "Whoa!"
Right, it's an inch thick.
No,
yeah.
I mean you
could break it over your knee.
Yeah, no, you can have a PVC pipe where the actual, not the circumference, but just the actual thickness of the pipe itself can be. I mean, I don't know if they make a thick inch, but they might if it's like got a 20-inch diameter. But PVC pipe comes in some pretty thick forms. So, I mean, I guess I just and when I heard this, I think I was already working at Home Depot in the electrical department, so I already started to understand plastic pipes. So, an actual like a good sized PVC pipe could actually really hurt yourself. However, like, it still wouldn't sound what they made it sound like in the video or in the song. But
you were like listening to this album on your way to Home Depot, and you're like, you know what? I will hit myself in the ankle with PVC pipe.
I can go home early.
Yeah.
Thunk.
Workers' comp.
Oh, you know what's funny?
There's a lot of good PVC content.
Because it's PVC pipe, and in Genius they put PVC.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just tried to fix it, so we'll see if that ever goes.
Guys, when I was about 10 years old, I was building a model car in my friend's garage, and I was cutting the pieces out of the form or whatever with an X-Acto knife. And I didn't want to crush the piece. It was like a delicate piece, and I didn't want to push down with the blade, so I went to pull up on it.
Yeah.
And so I pull up on it, and it snaps through, and I'm looking at this X-Acto blade as it's coming right at my face, and I'm like, oh shit, this is bad. Don't stab yourself in the face. Put this knife down. So I put it down right into my thumb. And the X-Acto blade went right into my thumbnail and into my thumb. And it really sucked. So
it sucks to listen to. You talk about it.
It was very traumatic for me. I was like, oh fuck. It was like, 10 years old in my friend's garage, and I was like, I definitely am losing this thumb. Everything was fine. It wasn't that big of a deal. But I just couldn't imagine sticking that under your fingernail on purpose.
Yeah, that's a pretty brutal line. However, I don't know. I think being stabbed through the thumbnail into the finger would be worse than going under the thumbnail, personally. So, but that's just, Go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
I hate this very much, but another thing I hate is there's like a insurance company or something that has a series of ads right now where it's a person's POV shot. And it's like different people hurting themselves. And
oh my god, that's fucking terrible.
I hate it.
Fuck so that commercial.
Much. I get so angry every time.
That's awful.
So the person falling, hanging the Christmas lights is the one that I actually have dreams about. I was very upset.
The guy cutting the apple is like a crime.
Oh fuck yes, Jesus Christ! Falling off the ladder is okay. Like I could probably deal with that, but the fucking apple, man, Jesus.
It's a bad commercial. It should feel bad.
There's like another commercial that I'm picturing in my mind that I can't get out of. I don't know what this commercial is, but like where a person is licking an envelope and gets a paper cut on their tongue.
That was Jack.
That's the commercial where people would rather do certain things than get rid of cable. It's a cable commercial.
Yes.
Yeah, and so like one person likes to get their arms stuck in a vending machine, but the ladies,
fuck that commercial, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck that
There's
kind of
another one likes to get hot scalding coffee poured on him all the time.
Right. That's not so bad. I can deal with that. See, that is funny. Guys, how do you feel about this song half being an outro? This 5-minute song with a 2-minute outro.
Is it?
Yeah, the words end at 3 minutes 10, almost on the second, and then it's 2 minutes of just repeating chorus.
Well, that partly what made me skip this song a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's too long, but whatever.
It's a bummer. I mean, there's a few things like this on this album, and things that like threw me off from it. I lost touch with this album, and I kind of wanted to touch on this in the beginning, but it didn't make sense, so I'll just throw it in here. When I first listened to this album, I absolutely loved it. And then I kind of distanced myself for a little while from this album, was listening to all this other ICP and Twisted stuff. And then when around 2008-9, I really like made a comprehensive list of songs, and so when I was looking like a playlist for my iPod, I mean, and so when I went to this album, I was like, I should throw some Dark Lotus on here. Because it only listed track 1, 2, 3, like I didn't know what songs were which, and I didn't want to take the time to go figure it out, so I left it off. And so I didn't listen to this album again until probably around 2012, where I was just like, let me just like listen to this for shits and giggles, and I did not like it. And I just like shut it down. And so going back and listening to it now, I like it so much more than I did, that I thought I did. And I'm liking it the way I liked it back when Bill and I were listening to it, when ICP was just the shit and this was new stuff and it was different. And so
see, I was a little bit surprised that I knew this album as inside and out as I did.
Yeah.
And I also was shocked at how much I preferred the ABK versions these days. But I was also surprised that, like, even though I was like, oh, I straight up know this album like front and back, I didn't realize that. But then I was also surprised that, like, oh, I still think this album fucking slaps, like, all the way through. So rad. Also, Ryan, I thought I remember you saying, like, I thought this was the era where you stopped paying attention. I didn't think you were familiar with this album at all, but did you? Because, like, I know you stopped listening around the time of the Six Jokers card, but from what I remember, this was like you were on your way out when Dark Lotus dropped. But did you know this album well?
I was on my way out. Memory for me is not reliable. I believe that I don't think that I had heard Dark Lotus before we went and saw them live. I really don't feel like I was familiar with any of the music because I remember not being thrown off by ABK being in the band and not really knowing who he was. So whatever I said at the beginning of this is probably not true. Probably misremembering. But I did buy this album. I did own it. And I know a lot of the songs, and there's some of my favorite ICP songs are coming up, man. So I'm very, very stoked. Yeah. So when I put it on this time, I was like, oh shit, yes, this is where these songs are. And, I think even some references, from our first episode, where I said Jay's, that's coming up. Yeah. So we've made reference to this album very early on in the podcast.
We certainly have.
And on that note, we should note that we are basically recording this episode on the 1-year anniversary of the first episode of this podcast being released, which is amazing. We're very happy and lucky that we've been able to do this. We're very happy and lucky that we've had anyone listening to it, let alone all of our lovely people that we love to visit every week in your ear holes. And thank you all for listening. And it's been quite a year, and here's to many more. And we've got more of the Dark Lotus coming up. We've got the next 4 tracks will be next week, and we'll talk about Call Upon Your Gods, And We Danced, Black Magic, and Taste of Blood. So it's another good week, guys.
Yeah.
Get ready. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Anything else to cover before we let these fine people go?
Yeah, man, I know we've been running long, but I wanted to give the homie Jiggles a shout out. He sent us an email. We mentioned on the episode where we interviewed him, he mentioned that he's working on putting up a database or just a list of all of the Psychopathic Records releases. And that is, he's got a webpage up now. And if you want to go check it out, it's at hatchethistory.wordpress.com. And he's basically keeping up with us. So he's got everything listed from all the Psychopathic related artists, from Inner City Posse's first Intelligence and Violence EP up through Bizarre Bazaar. And he'll keep adding, as he's going. He's doing everything chronologically as he's adding it, so it'll grow if you want to go check it out.
Nice. Just like our love for you, the listeners will grow. But yeah, so we also wanted to do a quick shout out. We've been checking out the reviews that y'all have been leaving us on Apple Music.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Apple Podcasts. They're amazing. We love all of you who took the time to write a review. They're wonderful. They make us very happy. They make us feel good. And just to let everyone know, for every 5-star review that you leave us and you write a little review, it helps us out a lot in the algorithm. Maybe we'll get a little bit more exposure on the music podcast stuff. Who knows? But if anyone hasn't done it and maybe still, enjoys our podcast, wants to give us a little shout out on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate it if you left us a review. Maybe we'll start reading some of those on the air. Who knows?
Yeah.
So thanks to everybody for listening. Also, quick note: if you like pro wrestling, my compatriots and I, who have been doing the NXT After Show for a couple years now, we recently left AfterBuzz, and we're doing it on our own now. We've got our own Twitter feed, our own Twitch channel. We just reached affiliate status on Twitch, so we'll be going live every week to talk about NXT. And we're going to be, putting a lot of extra stuff up on there. One of our co-hosts, who is a pro wrestler himself, he last night did a live watch of Wrestle Kingdom, which happened early this morning as we're recording this. Yeah, we're doing lots of stuff there. So check us out on Twitter at The Wrestle Pros. We're wrestling professionals on iTunes. Check us out if you like talking about wrestling. We're no longer just an NXT After Show. We're now talking about all the stuff. So yeah, join us.
I'm going to check that out.
All right.
Nice.
I love me some wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
AEW.
I like
to
how
hear
wrestling
you talk
so
about that.
goddamn hot. We did. We talked about it just yesterday, so go check it out. Yeah.
I want to hear you talk about it to me.
Okay.
Later.
I thought I was your snack pack. All right, everybody. Thanks for
You can
listening.
shit my armpits.
You're so weird. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm Bill.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Ryan.
This is the Dim Carnival. Guys, let's just bite a bowling ball and leave.